It is big business that collects most of the data about us, but increasingly it's the government that's using it. And nowhere is the convergence between private industry and public law enforcement more in evidence than on the internet.
Welcome.
AOL is one of the largest communities on the web.
You've got mail.
As in every community, AOL has its share of bad apples. But when AOL members commit a crime, their behavior online can often be used as evidence against them.
My name is John Ryan, and I serve as Chief Counsel.
John Ryan, a former New York City prosecutor, is AOL's Chief Counsel for Compliance and Investigation.
We are the principal interface on behalf of AOL with the law enforcement community.
You've got pictures.
When AOL finds any of its members exploiting children or engaging in any sort of criminal activity, the company will work with law enforcement to prosecute them.
We responded to 2 after-hours emergencies this week.
We were granted exclusive access to a meeting of AOL's Compliance and Investigations Unit.
All right, Ann, what's going on in the world of search warrants?
I'm getting about 30 a week, so I think that might pick up.
What types of crimes are they focusing on?
Mostly sexual crimes.
Ryan's staff deals solely with law enforcement issues.
It was something that AOL learned in terms of child exploitation.
There are court orders, warrants, and eavesdropping requests that are served on the company every day, not to mention the roughly 300 subpoenas it receives every week. AOL complies with many of those requests.
The charges in this case were child pornography as a result of an AOL member sending child porn through our network, and that's how the law enforcement folks became aware of this individual.
Don Coakley, the Director of Law Enforcement Affairs, spends much of his time in court testifying against AOL subscribers.
The defendant claimed he had no knowledge of the child pornography on his computer, and he actually took the stand to admit this. But I came on board as a rebuttal witness simply to say, we have evidence on our network that you used your AOL account to send the child porn.
AOL does not keep a record of the specific sites its members visit on the web or their instant messages, but it does keep your emails.
Why do you store emails?
It's for the convenience of the member, and it's very limited retention periods. Currently, for email, we only store it on our servers for approximately 28 days.
Unread emails?
That's correct.
Now, what if I receive an email and I delete it?
Only 2 days.
While emails are of interest to law enforcement, most investigations begin by trying to establish identity. AOL, like all internet service providers, can identify users and gather evidence by what's known as an IP address, a unique number assigned to every computer that connects to the internet. It can be used to determine who that computer belongs to and what a person using that computer did while online.
The IP address, I would say, is the prime ingredient to any law enforcement investigation because that provides the key to what we refer to as identity information.
How long do you keep that information?
Approximately 30 days.
But law enforcement has the ability to extend that time. So-called preservation requests are delivered to AOL every day, requiring the company to keep emails or IP addresses beyond the normal time frame.
What's the standard for a preservation request? Is it the same search warrant kind of thing? Or?
No, it's a very low threshold. It has to be made by a governmental entity, it has to be in writing, and it has to be a very precise request. They just can't say preserve any and all records relating to John Doe. They have to, narrow it down in written form.
And are emails and IP addresses of help to law enforcement? The FBI says yes.
It's been very productive. I mean, keeping in mind, we have a tremendous amount of due process that we need to address.
There's a lot to go through. That being said, I would assume there are times when it's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all very helpful.
In August of 2005, the Department of Justice subpoenaed AOL, Yahoo, MSN, and Google, seeking records of what people search for on the internet. The subpoenas were part of an effort to resurrect a federal law protecting children from internet pornography. Google successfully fought the request in court, but the rest of the major search engines complied. That concerns privacy advocates.
We need to be worried about both companies that collect our information and the government, because many companies are very solicitous to law enforcement. AOL, for instance, is not under any obligation to keep data after the user deletes it. And so in keeping it, they are specifically setting up the system to allow the government to gain access to more of your communications.
The risks from keeping information were made clear in August 2006 when AOL mistakenly made public 20 million separate internet searches conducted by hundreds of thousands of its subscribers. While the users were not identified by name, it is possible to identify some of them by their searches. Unlike AOL, which keeps personally identifiable search data for 30 days, Google keeps your searches forever. There are over 200 million Google searches every day, a number that keeps rising. And it's not just search. Google's ever-growing portfolio of products, each designed to extract information from the world around you, also extracts information about you, much of which Google keeps. Gmail is one example. Its vast storage capability allows for an infinite number of emails. But if you don't delete them, neither will Google. And even when you do delete emails, Google keeps them for 2 months or longer. Just why is it keeping these records? Google declined our request for an interview.
What they're talking about is data mining.
Privacy advocates worry that the company may someday want to sell personal profiles of its users. Fueling those fears, Google worked to exclude itself from a privacy bill in California designed to better regulate commercial data brokers, companies that are in the business of personal information.
One of the strongest opponents to this law is actually Google. Google wanted an internet service provider exemption, perhaps because someday down the road, Google would be a company that sold personal information for a fee.
The law, which has yet to be passed, no longer applies to Google.
I was under the impression that nobody could break in and steal my cell phone records. As it turns out, I was unfortunately very, very wrong. So now I'm put in a position, which is a very strange position, of fearing my own cell phone.
In June of 2005, Adam Music of Atlantic Beach, New York, discovered that someone was stealing the records of every call he had made on his cell phone. Music made the unsettling discovery after he called his cell phone provider, Singular Wireless, with a routine billing question.
The customer service rep was, Mr. Yuzik, you can look and get all the information online. I was very adamant with the woman. I said, ma'am, I don't have an online account. She was like, yeah, you do, sir. You opened it up 2 weeks ago. So then we went through the account. My name is correct. Everything's correct. My Social Security, you set it up right. We get to an email, which is not my email address. So once we got there, I kind of knew that there was a problem.
The problem was Music was being spied on. His former business partners had hired a private investigator, Gambino Information Services, to uncover information about him. Gambino had little trouble doing so. They were able to break into Music's account at Singular. When Singular discovered the breach, they told Music it could never happen again. But sure enough,